Hey everybody, Jason Blaha here with Ice Cream Fitness. Sorry I don't have any ice cream for you guys today, but what I do have is some Nutella. Let me get a bite of that. Mmm. Alright, what I'd like to talk to you guys about today is 5x5 training protocols and to present to you my defense of them. I know I've previously done a video on this, but the quality of it was just really horrific, and I've now purchased a new webcam and mic. And so again, I'd like to rehash this topic again. And again, one of the reasons I really want to touch on this subject is that I happen to be a huge fan of 5x5 training systems for hypertrophy purposes. And quite a few members of the YouTube fitness community have made disparaging remarks about it, or have said that it's not particularly good to do 5 sets of 5 for hypertrophy, that it's more powerlifting. And I simply disagree with this, and I would like to present my case for why. One of the first things we need to look at when we look at 5x5 systems, these are bodybuilder systems. They've been with us for a long time. Guys like Reg Park were popularizing these in the 60s and 70s. And I mean, again, a lot of the early bodybuilders from that era, I mean, from the 50s and things, used 5 sets of 5 type protocols, in order to help them gain both muscle mass and strength. And so again, this is a very time-proven rep and set scheme that's been with us for a long time, and the results have been proven for decades. So this isn't something new that's been thrown upon us, and it originated in the ranks of bodybuilding. I mean, in the ranks of very serious bodybuilding, in the days before steroids even became popular, before the use of drugs became really prevalent within the sport. And you really can't, just in light of that history, you can't completely discount it. Okay, and I would like to make it perfectly clear that, again, when I'm defending a training system or a method, I'm not saying that method is the best or the only way to go about doing things. And I will repeat again on a lot of my videos that there is no single one right way to train that is going to get the best results for everybody all the time. Different people have different needs. Even your needs for optimal results are going to change from time to time within your development over the years. And many champion bodybuilders, powerlifters, and strongmen over the years have used different methods and philosophies that oftentimes completely contradict with each other, and have still, become the best, the best of the best within their given sport. So again, I mean, I'm not trying to be dogmatic in this, and I'm not saying there is only one right way to go about doing things. But what I do want to touch upon next with this is the fact that one of the things I like about 5x5 type systems is the actual rep and set scheme. One of the criticisms oftentimes leveled against 5x5 systems by many who are not fans of them is that, again, that the rep range is too low, that the total time under tension is too low to properly induce hypertrophy, that the actual hypertrophy rep range is 8 to 12 reps. And where we get this idea in exercise science that 8 to 12 reps is the optimal rep range is that in studies that we've done, it's generally been noted that when you start using loads around 70 to 75% of your 1 rep max, that weight is actually heavy enough to recruit all available muscle fibers and all available motor units if you take that set close to failure within a single set. And what you generally find, 70 to 75% of 1 rep max is generally going to put you right around 8 to 12 reps. That's all you're going to be able to do with that weight. And so again, if you're trying to recruit maximum muscle fibers for every set, that weight or heavier will do so. But the general idea there is that you can do it in the fewest sets because you do the heaviest workload when you're doing 8 to 12 reps. You're going to move more total weight and induce a bit more metabolic fatigue doing a slightly higher rep set that still recruits all available muscle fibers. And part of the problem with that is that, again, that's more of an efficiency issue. It's not necessarily an issue of what's optimal. And doesn't address the fact that metabolic fatigue isn't a requirement for maximum muscle fiber hypertrophy. I mean, metabolic fatigue has its own benefits, which I've actually covered in another video, but it is not an absolute requirement to achieve maximum hypertrophy. It just isn't. And when you come back to the point, what I do feel that you can do by dropping down with something like 5 sets of 5 is that you can still have enough time under tension. If you're doing 5 sets of 5 for 25 total reps for the weight that's around 80% of your max, you are doing 5 total sets in which you are recruiting all available muscle fibers on a given lift. And what you are doing is sustaining that for 25 total heavy reps. So again, you get enough time under tension to induce near optimal hypertrophy on something like that. And so again, I mean, it is an excellent way to induce hypertrophy. Now, again, when you go back and look at programs like Starting Strength, I do agree. Those are generally 3 sets of 5. And you have 40% less total time under tension. And you're oftentimes only doing 1 total lift for a body part for only 15 reps. Okay, I'll agree with those sort of systems. For anyone but a novice, you're not getting enough total time under tension for optimal hypertrophy. You're getting enough to gain some hypertrophy, but that is a little more strength oriented. And when you add in those 2 extra sets, you do get quite a bit more time under tension, and you do actually induce a little bit of metabolic fatigue and get some of the benefits of that. And so again, it is very effective for that. And the other point I'd like to make regarding that is that, again, while we could argue that doing the higher reps might allow you to induce the same amount of hypertrophy in one session with fewer total sets, what it doesn't address is the rate of progressive overload. When you go and look at that, it's generally agreed by all experts across the board, whether we're talking about experts who have degrees in exercise science and who are researchers who actually study this, or you're talking about championship winning coaches who coach professional athletes, people who coach professional bodybuilders, and just in general, most of your championship winning bodybuilders all agree that, and we've agreed on this for 2,500 years. I mean, this goes back to ancient Greece, and the ancient Romans knew this, that progressive overload seems to be the biggest factor in muscle hypertrophy and in how big you're going to get. You have to be continually increasing the load, whether it's through additional metabolic work with the same rate or workload density, or just simply increasing the weight on the bar. But you have to be continually increasing the load, or you stop growing. You don't grow if the load isn't increasing. So what we oftentimes find, at least in my experience and the experience of some others, is that when you're working down in a little lower rep range in the 8 to 12, and you're working with something like a 5x5, that oftentimes you can get a slightly faster rate of progressive overload. You can add weight to the bar a little more quickly, as well as you can sustain the progressive overload longer before it actually stalls and you have to change something in your routine. So, again, while we have some aspects of efficiency with going with higher reps, we have other aspects that when working with something like a 5x5 for hypertrophy, that it has other aspects in which it's more efficient. So again, it's not an open and shut case that one is better than the other. But again, I personally prefer the 5x5 because it does seem to allow for many trainees, again, the faster rate of progressive overload and to sustain the rate of progressive overload longer. And that really is the key to putting on quite a bit of muscle mass in a short period of time. Okay, this video is running a little long, bicep shot to keep your attention so that nobody gets bored. All right, the next point I'd like to raise in defense of not necessarily just the 5x5 rep and set scheme is the fact that 5x systems in general, when you read 5x5 workouts, whether again it's one of the newer ones that we see online like Strong Lift 5x5, for novices, or some of the older 5x5 type systems that Reg Park wrote for various intermediate and advanced bodybuilders that are quite a bit more volume, because oftentimes you're doing more than one lift for body part for 5 sets of 5. But regardless of that, you see several things in common that I really, really like. And I think that these are extremely beneficial for hypertrophy, particularly for the non-advanced trainee. And first of all is, again, they tend to be very high frequency. Most 5x5 systems have you doing some type of squatting and some type of pressing 3 times a week, in addition to some type of pulling 3 times a week. Again, as I've covered in the training frequency video, if you're a drug-free trainee, training a muscle group multiple times per week has huge dividends, huge dividends. And again, it just goes back to the way that protein synthesis works post-workout and how long the growth and adaptation window is. And again, I've covered that in another video. And on top of that, the other thing that you see with these 5x5 systems is that there's a huge focus on heavy barbell work, heavy compound movements. And what you oftentimes see with a lot of novice trainees, they want to shy away from a lot of the heavy work, and they get focused on this obsession with doing dumbbell work, which isn't necessarily bad in and of itself, but again, it's sometimes the load is lessened with barbell work. Doing cables, machines, tons of isolation work. I mean, these are things that are more of refinement. They're not going to put a lot of size on you. And so again, a lot of guys who are seeking size, they'll get hung up in doing way too much of these things and not enough of the heavy barbell work, and they stop growing, they stagnate. And again, so these type of systems will keep the focus on the type of lifts that are going to put the real muscle on you, that are going to put a lot of meat on your bones. Again, heavy barbell work and heavy compound movements done at a high frequency. If you're a drug-free trainee, that's really what you need to focus on if you really want to put on a lot of muscle mass. And again, I mean, you'll see guys who will try to tell you the reps are too low, or just doing barbell squats as a primary movement isn't necessarily even that great for your thighs. And I would argue that it's great for overall development. And I mean, as for me, I've got pretty well developed thighs. I don't think anyone would dispute that for the amount of time I've been training again, and a guy my size. My thigh development's pretty good. I've rebuilt my thighs, again, I've only been training again for a year after being sick. I've rebuilt my thighs entirely off of 5-rep or less back squats and front squats. And that is exclusively what I do for them. And again, I mean, even one of the other points you could level with this is that a lot of the people who will say the system is, these sort of systems are not good for muscle hypertrophy, they'll tell you that, doing 3 sets of 8 with 75% of your max is actually, pretty decent for hypertrophy, that you can make good gains off of that. And then I guess my question to them would be, then if 3 sets of 8 for 24 total reps with 75% of your max is good for hypertrophy, why wouldn't 25 total reps with 80%? So actually 5% heavier on the weight and 1 more rep, in your total rep and set scheme is going to be inferior to doing 3 sets of 8. I mean, and again, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So again, I mean, the points to consider with all of this is that, again, the 5x5s, they have a long history of use, even in the pre-steroid days, to develop huge muscular and powerful physiques. They use a rep and set scheme that allows not only for enough time under tension and muscle fiber recruitment for really good muscle growth, but they allow you to usually sustain a high rate of progressive overload for a long period of time. And again, they put a heavy focus on the movements that are going to put the most muscle on an individual in the shortest amount of time, and they have you do them very often. So again, that's my basic defense of 5x5 type training systems. I'll give you guys another bicep shot. And that's all I have to say about that. I'll talk to you next time.